three pillars that you have from pages 187 through 189 about the catastrophic plate tectonics model. First is this. Firstly, the ocean crust broke loose from the continental margins and started to plunge into the Earth's mantle. That's number one. Number two, secondly, at the same time that the cold slabs of ocean floor were descending through the mantle, the surrounding hot material was being pushed out of the way. The computer simulations conducted by Garner suggest that the entire depth of the mantle underwent large-scale flow. This has been confirmed by seismic studies, which use earthquakes to reconstruct the interior of the Earth. These studies have revealed the presence of cool slabs of material, apparently remnants of the former ocean crust, located beneath subduction zones and extending deep into the mantle. And then, the third part, meanwhile, as the cold ocean crust was diving into the Earth's interior, it was being rapidly replaced by hot mantle material welling up along the mid-ocean ridges where the plates were separating. As this hot material came into contact with cold ocean water, the water was vaporized and propelled high into the atmosphere. The effect may have been something like the geysers we see today in volcanic areas such as Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, but on an altogether more spectacular scale. The catastrophic plate tectonics model suggests that these geysers erupting along thousands of kilometers of mid-ocean ridge were among the fountains of the Great Deep mentioned in Genesis 7:11. The ocean water that was caught up by these supersonic jets eventually fell back to the Earth as an intense global rain. This may have been the primary source of the rain that fell from the windows of heaven for 40 days and nights. So on one level, this proposes how there could have been an inundation of massive amounts of water. There's another quote, though, there's another mechanism that you highlight, and that is that the newly formed bedrock of the ocean would have been hotter, so to speak, and thus would have risen higher in the mantle. And that would have pushed water up, which would have pushed water out over onto the land. So I'm going to read a quote here in regards to that. Most crucially for a scientific theory of the flood, the CPT model, that is catastrophic plate tectonics model, is able to explain how the continents came to be inundated with water. As we've already seen, the model proposes that the cool, dense ocean floor from before the flood was rapidly replaced with new, warmer ocean crust along the mid-ocean ridges. The new ocean floor was less dense and more buoyant than the old ocean floor, and therefore rode higher in the Earth's mantle. As a consequence, the level of the ocean floor was raised significantly, causing the ocean basins to become shallower and displacing water onto the continents. And if I go forward to 192, that was page 191. 192 has sea level would have risen several kilometers over its pre-flood level, sufficient to flood the continents and cover the tops of even the highest pre-flood mountains. Of course, this also helps us to explain one of the most puzzling features of the geological record, the existence of widespread marine sediments on the continents. During the flood, the rising and advancing ocean waters would have driven sediments onto the continents in a conveyor belt fashion, and then eventually the flood was brought to an end by the complete replacement of the old ocean floor. Since the new ocean crust was relatively warm, it had less of a density difference with the underlying mantle, and therefore less of a tendency to sink back into the Earth's interior. The process of subduction slowed down and eventually came to a virtual stop, thus in turn brought an end to the overturn of the mantle and the process of rapid seafloor spreading. The fountains of the Great Deep were closed up and the global rain ceased. As the new ocean crust cooled and subsided, the waters drained of the continents and back into the deepening ocean basins. The flood finally came to an end.
Baumgartner is a geophysicist. He did his PhD developing the supercomputer model that allows him to model the dynamics of the Earth's mantle.
Okay.
And it was through applying that model to this kind of creationist problem of plate tectonics that he developed this concept of runaway subduction. So we know that under certain conditions of stress, the mantle rocks are able to weaken by orders of magnitude. This is a phenomenon that we have been able to observe in the laboratory setting. And John Baumgartner was able to show that if you have a slab of ocean floor subducting into the Earth's mantle. Then, under certain conditions of stress, as that slab descends into the mantle, it causes frictional heating around the subducting slab. That frictional heating causes the mantle to warm up, the mantle rocks to warm up, and they weaken. And as they weaken, the slab is able to dive a bit faster. And as it dives a bit faster, there's more frictional heating. The mantle rocks weaken further. The slab can dive a bit faster.
Right.
And in effect, you kind of reach a kind of critical threshold where you hit this thing called runaway subduction, where the subducting slab is moving at rates of meters per second.
Okay.
And it was that insight combined with, many other geophysical and geological evidences that led to the proposal of the catastrophic plate tectonics model, as it's known. In 1994, it was proposed by 6 creationist Earth scientists, including John Baumgartner, who proposed CPT, catastrophic plate tectonics, as a model of how the global flood could have happened, how it could have unfolded. And what I find exciting as an Earth scientist myself is that the catastrophic plate tectonics model is able to explain all of the things that the conventional plate tectonics model explains. Okay. So plate tectonics is a very well-established model.
Right.
A huge range of different geological observations are explained by plate tectonics. So we have the jigsaw fit of the continents. The fact that, you look at the east coast of Africa and it seems to fit into the east coast of South America fits into the west coast of Africa. Right. And that suggests that at some point the Atlantic Ocean has opened up, and those continents have separated. They were once together. We have the distribution of mountain belts and earthquakes and volcanoes, which are very well explained by plate tectonics. We have the structure of the ocean floor, the fact that we have this big seam that runs down the middle of the ocean, the mid-ocean ridge, right. And why that's elevated compared to the surrounding ocean floor, and so on. So we have loads of pieces of data that fit the plate tectonics model, and catastrophic plate tectonics equally explains all of that data. But the exciting thing is it also explains some observations that conventional plate tectonics doesn't explain, or at least doesn't explain well.
And what are those?
So, for example, we have evidence now of rapid geomagnetic reversals. Back in, I think it was 1986, one of the other researchers who collaborated on CPT, a physicist called Russ Humphreys, had proposed a model for understanding the decay of the Earth's magnetic field during the flood.
Okay.
Basically what happened during CPT is as these cold ocean plates dive down into the Earth's interior, they have the momentum to actually punch their way right the way down through the Earth's mantle, and they sort of pile up on top of the Earth's core.
Okay.
And it's the outer core of the Earth, the liquid outer core of the Earth, where the Earth's magnetic field is generated. And as this cold material piles up on top of the core, it disturbs the fluid flows in the liquid part of the outer core of the Earth, where the magnetic field is generated, and in effect induces a series of magnetic reversals.
Okay.
And Humphreys, back in 1986, predicted that if this model was correct, then we ought to be able to go out and find lava flows in which evidence of magnetic reversals is preserved, because lava flows contain magnetic minerals, right, that orient themselves with the prevailing magnetic field of the Earth. We ought to find lava flows that actually preserve a reversal in the process of happening. Now, in the conventional model, you wouldn't expect any such thing, because a thin lava flow that perhaps cools down within a couple of weeks is going to form in a much shorter time than it takes for the Earth's magnetic field to reverse itself.
Right.
But in the creationist version of the model, we predict that there were very rapid magnetic reversals, and that therefore a thin lava flow might actually capture a reversal happening.
Okay.
So he made that prediction. It was published in a paper in 1986. In 1989, geologists who were not creationists were studying lava flows at Steens Mountain in Oregon, and they found a thin lava flow that seemed to preserve a very large and rapid change in the Earth's geomagnetic field.
Okay.
They were rather astonished by this. It was published initially in 1989. Because the discovery was so astonishing, they did further work to confirm it, to be sure that they'd got this right.
Right.
And in 1995, they published their findings in Nature. It was kind of, I think it was published under a heading that kind of made a point about how astonishing, this reversal was.
Right.
So it's, this magnetic event had obviously happened within about a fortnight, in the time that this lava cooled. So this was actually a confirmation of a prediction that is uniquely made by the creationist version of catastrophic plate tectonics.
That's pretty cool.
Another example of prediction is that in conventional plate tectonics, as these ocean plates dive into the Earth's interior along subduction zones, they're moving quite slowly. The plates are moving at about the speed that the rate that your fingernail grows. And they don't really have the momentum to be able to descend through the Earth's mantle, so they sort of get stuck. There's kind of a bit of a plate graveyard in the upper part of the mantle where the plates sort of get stuck. But in Baumgartner's version of CPT, where the strength of the mantle rocks is weakened by orders of magnitude, these plates were predicted to descend right way through the Earth's mantle, right down to the top of the core.
Okay.
And it's only been in recent decades, with the development of seismic tomography, that allows us to use earthquake waves to sort of image the interior of the Earth, that we actually now have evidence of these large cold slabs of rock that indeed do descend right the way through the Earth's interior down to the top of the core.
That's pretty cool.
So again, that was a confirmation of a prediction that sort of uniquely arises really from catastrophic plate tectonics.
Yeah.
Now I ought to just add one interesting kind of caveat, which is about the magnetic reversals. One of the co-authors of the study that I mentioned earlier about the rapid magnetic reversals at Steens Mountain, more recently, in recent years, actually retracted his original work. He argued that he must have made a mistake, and that he kind of retracted this idea of this rapid geomagnetic reversal event. Russ Humphreys has kind of commented on that and says actually the reasons he gives for his retraction are not particularly compelling.
Right.
We don't obviously know exactly whether there was any other anything else behind his retraction, but scientists were certainly aware that creationists were kind of seeing this, and viewing it as a confirmation of a creationist prediction. What's also interesting is yeah, and I'm also not aware that his other co-authors on the paper have retracted. I think it was just one of the authors. So that again, is interesting that not all of the authors appear to have, retracted that study. But for the sake of openness, I probably should just mention that one of the authors did sort of seek to retract it. But I think the evidence, is valid. And so there you have at least just a couple of examples of predictions that uniquely arise from CPT that seem to be confirmed by evidence in the real world. And again, I go back to one of the things I said earlier, that one of the hallmarks of a good scientific theory is that it's able to explain more of the data.
Right.
So plate tectonics is a great theory. It explains an enormous range of data. There's, it's no surprise that it has become the predominant model for understanding the Earth in the discipline of geology, because it is such a successful and very impressive theory.
Right.
But actually, catastrophic plate tectonics may help us to explain even more of the data, which is really exciting.
Thank you for listening. Credible Faith is a global missions-minded apologetics ministry with content available in 7 different languages across 7 websites: German, Russian, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English. If you would like to support the global apologetics work of Credible Faith, go to crediblefaith.org and click on the donate icon. If you would like me to give an apologetics workshop or participate in a debate at your university, or if you would like me to give a Great Commission missions conference or apologetics conference at your church, get in touch with me through the Contact Us section of the Credible Faith website. You can also submit a request through the website to get Credible Faith's monthly email. If you are a native speaker of Russian, German, Italian, French, Spanish, or Portuguese, and if you notice that an essay from the English website is not available on the Credible Faith website for your language, feel free to get in touch with me about translating the essay, and I would read through your translated material for quality control and the desire to see content from the essay made available in your language. Thank you for listening, and have a great night.